Hello guys, Charles here and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be continuing our introduction to the bebop chord scales. Today we're going to be looking at the dominant 7 diminished chord scale, which is a cool sound used obviously primarily, as the name suggests, on dominant 7 chords. However, just before we break this one down, I just want to remind you that the previous two that we've already learned, which was the major 6th diminished scale and the minor 6th diminished scale, can both be used on dominant chords as well. These are just various flavours that we can use as we normally can on dominant chords to highlight different degrees, different alterations and different extensions that appeal to us or that feel suitable for that particular piece. But remember, the whole point of putting the diminished chord into these chord scales, whether it's a major 6th diminished or a minor 6th diminished, or today the dominant 7 diminished, it's functioning as a dominant chord. So these have a very strong pull to them. They've got that magnetism that we expect from a dominant chord that kind of, I suppose, repels is the right word, or propels us towards the tonic chord, whatever that is in that chord scale. So it took me a while to get to grips with that myself, which is why I'm pointing it out. I thought, oh, well, maybe every dominant chord I use the dominant 7 diminished, and I only use the major 6th one on major chords or minor 6 on minor chords. That's not the way this works. Each chord scale, kind of, as we've hopefully started to point out, it has so many other chords hidden within it. So you can use these however you like. So the dominant 7 diminished, again, these do what they say on the tin. Instead of having a 6th chord, which is what we've been using so far, either a major 6 or a minor 6 chord, followed by a diminished, this time we're starting with a dominant 7 chord followed by the diminished. And that dominant 7 chord simply rotates through its rotations or inversions, as does the diminished chord. However, let's look at the scale this creates first of all. So first off, let's compare this dominant 7 diminished scale to the major scale. So in the key of C major, we have this. So to make this a dominant 7 diminished scale, we're going to flatten the 6th degree and add a flattened 7th, which looks like this. So we've got the first 4 notes of the major scale, then the 5th. Now here we've got a flattened 6th, a flattened 7, a major 7, and a root. So it's easier to compare this scale to the major 6th diminished scale than it is a major scale, because we've got to flatten a 6th and add a flattened 7. It's just a bit confusing. So if you're confident, which hopefully you are by this point, with your 6th diminished scale, which is this one, then all you do is simply raise that 6th degree up to a flattened 7th. And that's kind of the way we're going to be thinking about all of the examples today, is we're just playing exactly the same ones that you've already learned as a major 6th diminished, but every time you were playing the 6th note, it's been raised by a semitone, which takes us from a 6 to a dominant 7 or a minor 7, a flat 7. So that final scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 7, back to the root. So the chord scale we create here, again, as the name suggests, is a dominant 7, then a diminished. If you haven't mastered your chord rotations yet, please do go back and check that video out up here. When I first encountered these Barry Harris scales quite a few years ago now on the YouTube videos, I tried learning them. I tried to learn these chord scales and I could kind of do them, but then I'd always forget them by the next day. And it's because I was just trying to learn the whole thing as one unit, learn this chord scale. Now remember, once you break it down into just remembering it's a dominant chord followed by a diminished chord, and each of those simply goes through its inversions, it's so much easier. The reason I found it so difficult initially and couldn't see the pattern is because I wasn't confident with my chord inversions on the guitar. So please do check out that chord rotations video. Again, you can click the card up here, and I outline exactly how to understand these inversions on the guitar. It's really not that difficult, but it just requires a little bit of forethought. And once you've got those down, these chord scales, you can kind of just see them. dominant 7, diminished, dominant 7, diminished, dominant 7, diminished, dominant 7, diminished, back to where we started. Next up is the seconds, which we know don't sound good, but we can use them as a tension and release them to other intervals of the chord scale. So let's start with seconds. So some semitone clashes there, like I say, doesn't sound great yet. Here's the thirds, which we can use to resolve the seconds. And here would be an example of resolving some seconds to some thirds. We've got a second here, D and E, resolved downwards to C. E and F to D. F and G to E. G and A flat to F. A flat and B flat to G. B flat and B natural to A flat. B natural and C to B flat, and C and D to B natural. So using intervals of a third and the 7 diminished chord scale gives us the traditional sounds within this chord scale. So those are the sounds you want to use in a jam playing your jazz standards. Now, the remaining few ways we're going to look at this are more modern sounds, and these would be for use either very cautiously in jazz standards if you can get away with them, but more likely in your own compositions or in modern fusion tunes. We're kind of breaking the rules a little bit here, but by doing so we're creating equally beautiful chords, which I think in the last video I said were kind of reminiscent of a Ben Monder or an Allan Holdsworth tonality. So we're going to break the rules now and let's hear what sounds we come up with. So although we've been starting with the dominant 7 chord, remember I said that it's kind of like a sharp 6 at the beginning. Now if we count backwards through this scale with the C being note 8 and note 1, the 7th degree is actually a major 7, it's B. So what happens if we start with a major 7 chord? This is exactly what we've done with the previous 2 chord scales. We started with a 7th chord at this point in the video. So let's hear what we come up with sliding that major 7 shape through the dominant 7 diminished scale. So some really cool sounds, certainly some you could get away with in a traditional context, and others where you'd probably get a very funny look. Next up is stacking fourths. So again, this one's going to give us, for our starting chord, C, F, B natural and E. So what do we get when we move that structure through this chord scale? Let's hear. So tricky one there, but it's got some pretty cool sounds in. Again, it's getting very modern now. And finally, we're looking at some spread chords now. So we start this one on kind of a C9 actually. So this is a dominant tonality that we're starting on. So we've got C, G, D, and in fifths it would be A sharp, but B flat on the top, which gives us that C9 sound. Some really beautiful chords there. I really love these sounds, really reminiscent of House of Mirrors to me. Now remember, like I said last time, you may think, well, if I'm not going to be using these in traditional standards, then what's the point? Remember, the whole idea of anything you practice should be simply to either open your ear or open your eyes. So you want to practice fourths and fifths even if you never intend to play them, because it's going to help your visualization on the fretboard, and it's going to help your ear to really hear the intricacies of these chord scales even if you only ever play them as a dominant 7 diminished voicing. That's still going to be really beneficial to you to challenge yourself and do these slightly weird sounding exercises, because first of all you might love the sound of them, as I do. I love these modern sounds, but you're simply improving your knowledge, and there's no harm in doing that. If you can play every scale you know in seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths and sevenths, good luck with that on the guitar, then you're going to really know these scales inside and out. And even if you only ever use them in a very traditional or simple approach, you're going to use them with a real sense of confidence, and you're going to know all the voice leading that lives in there, and you'll know the scale in a really broad way, which is what we're aiming for everything we know on the guitar. We need to know it as well as possible. So I hope you found that one useful, guys. Some lovely colours in the dominant 7 diminished scale, particularly useful on altered chords, as most dominant 7 chords with lots of extra notes tend to be. Let me know down below what you'd like to see covered on this channel. Please do give this video a like, subscribe, ding that notification bell to be kept updated with my new videos, share with any of your friends who might find this useful. And as always, I hope you're all doing very well, getting plenty of practice in, and I very much look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers!
Roll up, let me embed a story you'll never forget. A drip, drip, but drowning in debt now. You can't buy your way out, and I heard you find it difficult to cope.